Okay, I'll try and keep this bright and lighthearted. And I appreciated Ken's comment about being an old computer hobbyist. That's me. I started in the late 1970s and hand built my first computer. And I only had a quarter K of memory when I started. That's 256 bytes. Let me just explain a little bit about where I'm coming from so I can describe where I'm going. A couple of years ago, I was interested in producing games that would run on mobile devices, Android and iOS. And I was insistent that I really didn't want to program in the conventional languages that I felt were harder to use than Smalltalk. So I really wanted to do this in Smalltalk. What I did was I wrote a virtual machine that interpreted VisualWorks bytecodes. And I actually was able to get that running and deployed. And for a while, at least, I had a game that was up for sale on the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store, written in Smalltalk. This is the Windows version of the game. This is actually running in VisualWorks. And for some reason, I haven't run this program in a couple of years. The fonts aren't working right, so my apologies for that. But the idea is that you can swipe tiles across and capture coins, and you want to make a path from an egg, which is the number 4, down to the number 1, so that a sea turtle can hatch, run down the path, and then be carried away in the ocean. And so there's my sea turtle going by. And then it goes to a new level, and you have to try and solve this level. I'm not going to get too much into this, but this was a game that was actually released. Honestly, the game wasn't very successful because I must admit, I'm not a very good marketing person. So regardless, when I finished that, I thought, what do I have? I have a virtual machine, but it's intricately tied to Syncom software, which of course is commercial software. I was actually, I actually had a license agreement with Syncom for this product. But if I was to do anything more with it, I wouldn't be able to. For instance, I couldn't make anything open source because in order to use it, you had to use Syncom technology, which is commercial technology. So I started thinking, what would it take to build my own compiler and actually modify the interpreters who had no longer used anything to do with Syncom technology, and come up with my own Smalltalk, which is actually what I did. What I have, I'm calling this Pigeon Smalltalk. I'll explain the name in a few minutes, but that command runs Pigeon Smalltalk, and I have a very, very primitive UI, as you can see, but it's running in a web browser and connects to the Smalltalk image by WebSockets. And here I'll do the famous Smalltalk first expression. 3 + 4, print it, and that gives me 7. So I have a full read eval print loop where I can actually type Smalltalk code in and do things. I can actually, I can also file in code and do things with that. And now the question is, where do I take this? And where would I like to take it? My feeling is I've done so many fun projects in computers over the years. I don't know if any of you know, but there's a ray tracing program called PavRay. That's an open source ray tracing program that takes text descriptions of scenes and renders them with full shadows, lighting, reflections, and so on.
Wow, it is rendered?
This is computer rendered. That scene is rendered.
I'm a nature photographer, and this one is really, really good. I
No
must see the
kidding.
source code for this one. Oh, wow.
I've communicated with the person who created this image, and I have permission to use this image for this project. But yes, he rendered this, and the ray tracing renders it pixel by pixel. Right? It doesn't draw the duck first and then the swan and whatever. It starts in the top left-hand corner and goes left to right, top to bottom.
Wow, this I would sell my soul for this one.
This is, yeah, this is an amazing image. This is probably one of the very best images I've seen from Pavre. And what I want to say is Pavre actually derived from code that I did back in the 1980s. I wrote a ray tracer called DKB Trace, and I was creating some, to me, some interesting pictures. But I thought, well, I've had fun with this. I'll let other people have fun with it as well. So I released it as open source. And then a bunch of people were interested in extending it. So I said, tell you what, I'll hand over the rights to DKB Trace and all the source code, call it something else, keep it portable across platforms, and keep it, what was the third one? Open source, portable across platforms, and call it a different name. Those are the three conditions. And they called it Pavre. I worked with them for a few years to help develop it. And since then, they've taken it in a really amazing direction. And I think
Ellen,
the things that you can, pardon me?
This
Sorry?
is not a photograph. This is a
No, this is computer rendered. Yeah, that's the amazing bit. So anyways, my feeling was, hey, this was so fun to work on. I'd like to encourage other people to get into computing and to be able to do things like this. This is the source code for my virtual machine. Tiny, tiny, tiny. But it does have garbage collectors. It has primitives. This is my WebSockets interface, so I can talk to the UI. And my objective is to build up a UI that will run in a web browser that uses a WebSockets connection to VisualWorks, and then basically not VisualWorks, to PigeonTalk. And I will basically send instructions to JavaScript to say, draw this box, draw this line, draw this shape, draw this picture. And JavaScript will do the drawing for me, but all the instructions for how to draw things are coming from Smalltalk, from PigeonTalk. So that's the project that I have right now. I'm calling it PigeonTalk because I would like to aim this towards younger people who are getting interested in computing. And I'd like to be able to animate this. This is not the way I'd like to see the code look. I would like to see something that has a much more graphical look and that helps animate the execution of the program. And I was thinking that for a message send, I could render it as a pigeon taking a message, literally taking a message and flying off screen with it to another object, and then flying back with the response. And so I call the system PigeonTalk. I've since
Why can't this be done with open Smalltalk VM, the cog basically, or whatever?
That's a wonderful question. Let me get to that in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, excellent question. It's not that it can't be done. It's that this is the direction that I'm going in right now. But let me finish this. So I'd like to be able to animate that, and so hence I'm calling it PigeonTalk. And I've been told that that name is more of a rude slur in French, so I'm apparently going to have to change the name. In terms of doing this in a more traditional, like in Pharo, that's actually, like, I'm starting to think more in that direction, and in thinking that what I want to do, I can do for both platforms. So
Yeah, I'm more of a squeak person, but
Squeak.
if it worked, yeah.
Um, what I'm looking at is if we can get the programming to be a bit more graphical. I'm thinking shades of Scratch, where it has the blocky type look, but I'd like to still keep, if I can, the copy and paste nature of text programs, but be able to render it in a way that is a bit more, that adds a bit more understanding to the code, a bit more meaning to the code than just straight text.
An interesting question there for Giselle and Merrick is, can this be layered on top of Silicon Squeak?
To make it more general, can we make a quick port to make this a parallel ray tracer? Yeah, of course. That's
the
going
ray
to be a
tracer,
week or two work.
the ray tracer part of it is just one of the projects I'm looking at doing.
Yeah, well, what I meant was simply that rather than making it software bound, is there a reason why it can't be implemented in such a way that the hardware implementation of the VM can't interface with this?
I don't see a reason, except what I would like to do is, once I have it in a more graphical form, it opens up the possibility to get away from the text-based syntax. And I know we're all used to method names that have camel case words with colons in them. But if I can program graphically and depend a little bit more on drag and drop, for instance, I could have method names that have spaces in them and no colons, and still have spaces or spots to drop in parameters and be able to show that in a more graphical way. So that's a curiosity I have, to see whether I can do that or not. And to do that, I need tighter control over the compiler and tighter control over the runtime to be able to achieve that. But some of my other goals can fit quite nicely into a Faro environment as well. Being able to have sample projects that people can build on, where we provide the base software for you, and then you can experiment on top of that. Sound effects, music, digital logic, pin art. This is what I would call pin art. In this case, I just sort of drop pins along an ellipse and then said, okay, connect pin 5 to pin 25 with a line of this color, and then just loop through. We could provide a ray tracer and have people play with computer graphics that way. So that part there can be done quite nicely in Faro. So for me, this is an exploration to see what I can do. I do have a Kickstarter on this, but I'm not going to be pushing the Kickstarter. At this point, it's not going to be achieving its goal. And right now it's turning out that I'm going to be a bit too busy for the next little while. But for me, it's been an interesting experiment. And I still have this desire to help people get introduced to computing and get them excited to work in neat areas like graphics and rendering and sound. I'm excited by what Stephen Travis Pope is doing with his music, and I've been following that for a while. These are things that I like seeing computers being used for, to enhance people's creativity. One more thing I'll mention before I finish here is that I will be giving a talk to Camp Smalltalk Supreme coming up in June. And my talk is going to be basically about Smalltalk for profit and for profit and for play. So talking about Smalltalk and how it's being used for commercial projects and for personal play projects. And I'll bring up a few of these types of projects. And I'd love to hear from people, especially some of the projects I've seen on on this discussion today to include short videos of things that people have done for commercial interests and also for just for fun. And with your permission, I'd like to be able to present some of those to the Camp Smalltalk Supreme in June. And that's basically where I'm at. That's what I'm up to. So any questions?
We have Alfonso who raised his hand.
I'm sorry?
Alfonso has raised his hand on Zoom. So Alfonso, if you want to ask a question, just go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. That's a very interesting presentation, David. I think it's yet another interesting facet to something similar to what Merrick had said earlier with his project plan. As far as being an implementation of Smalltalk and an environment to work in. I'm curious on a couple of things. One is about the classes that you use. I guess those are all taken from VisualWorks image. So there's, I don't know, I imagine there's a way to create like a headless Smalltalk that could be used.
Okay, that's a good question. When I started working on my game, knowing that it would be targeting a mobile device, I started off with a subclass of object in a different namespace, which I called object, and built my own class hierarchy underneath that. So I have my own classes for order collections, for sets, for dictionaries, identity dictionaries, and everything else. So in the end, all I had to do was extract that code. This is all of the source code for the Smalltalk that I've extracted, and now I can load this in. My compiler actually compiles all this code, and this is different from VisualWorks code. None of this code here derives from anything from VisualWorks. So this is my own class library. So yeah, it's a standalone class library with no SynCon technology in it at all.
Yeah, cool. All right. So the other question is, I guess we can, or you can create a headless version of the Smalltalk image that sits and communicates through WebSockets to other people, so that we can set these up on, for example, Kubernetes or Docker containers, and
Yes.
have them running systems that servers that could respond to outside requests. And in such a case, it wouldn't be necessary to rely on a JavaScript-based browser in order to implement the UI. We could create a different type of browser.
Absolutely.
With the visual interface.
That would certainly be possible. In fact, that's what you're seeing right here. This is a headless version of the image running. In this case, it's on SideGWin on Windows, and I'm connecting to it by just opening up well, I open up my HTML, which establishes a WebSockets connection to that on a particular port. And I could set it up to handle multiple ports and have multiple people interacting with that image at the same time. In theory, I haven't tried that yet. Again, more things to experiment with. The idea is I would like to be able to deploy this onto a Raspberry Pi and then be able to communicate to it remotely and have my development environment sitting on a Windows or Linux or Mac environment, but talking to and having direct contact with the objects running on the Raspberry Pi. So,
excuse me a sec, David. Have
Sure.
you seen Lars Bach's work on embedded Smalltalk? Because what you just said rings a bell with that.
I will look it up. I don't know if I've actually seen that. Lawrence?
Was
Lars.
Or
Oh,
OVN.
type it
Lars.
in. LARS.
Yeah, yes.
Alpha Romeo
That no
Sierra.
rings the bell. What's his last name again?
Put it in the chat.
Sure.
I was gonna chip in, Dave, that
Yeah.
it would be worth you checking out what Eric on Bike's been doing with Code Paradise, because there's a lot of similarities with what he's done with a small talk using WebSockets. He's gone a slightly different path in that he's used the Pharaoh Bootstrap components to build his own image. So he defines his own classes, which is a cut down version of the image. And then that he ships over a different image. You can load it in the browser using the Squeak.js VM.
Right.
It's pretty clever. It's pretty clever. So it's got a lot of similarities, but he's using web components as his kind of GUI foundation. So there might be some ideas to borrow there.
Yeah,
So
incidentally,
Eric, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say this. I just managed to get it working on Linux the other day. It presumably could still work on the 2 mobile devices, although I haven't tried it I haven't tried this version of the program on those devices. But yeah, it should be fairly portable. The one restriction is my VM assumes that I'm running on a 64-bit OS. So some older Raspberry Pis, which only run 32-bit OSs, couldn't run this.
Right. So I think was that this? The David, you got a question as well?
I was just going to say that we did a similar thing with. I put a link in the chat to a REPL that we wrote using Pharaoh.js, and it works. So originally we were going to do the same thing. We were just going to ship over code and run it on the server side, and then get back the response and display it. But of course, that has some security concerns. So we actually send it over to the Pharaoh.js server, and they're converted to JavaScript, which we send back and execute the JavaScript on the in the browser. So we now have a Smalltalk REPL. It uses Pharaoh.js, so it's not a perfect match for Smalltalk. So at the moment, for example, characters come out as 1-character strings rather than proper characters, but we're actually probably going to pursue fixing that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to you about that, Dave. I've been watching Pharaoh.js for a while as well. So it's there are some interesting things going on there. With this one, what I'm actually planning to do is to deliver over WebSockets, deliver JSON commands to JavaScript and have it just interpret the commands in the JSON. So you'd have a command that would say, draw a line from here to there, and it would call the appropriate JavaScript to draw the line. If you want to implement that in Smalltalk or in Pharaoh, that would work just as well.
Yeah, you can do that directly. So you could ship over JavaScript that has the method to draw the lines or whatever very easily with Pharaoh.js.
So there are possibilities. I'm still exploring, but it's a fun
So
little project.
I think what Code Paradise does is it's just you're running Smalltalk in the browser, like a minimum version of Smalltalk, and there's plugins for web components. That's how it's working. And so it's like there's bindings to